Hey guys, Jay here. So this is going to be my final video that I post this year. So Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and all the other holidays that you guys celebrate out there. But yeah, this is gonna be my final video. And in this video, I wanna talk about my product of the year and what my system looks like going into 2027 as my reference system, because a lot has changed in my system. Now, admittedly, a lot has happened in 2025. As some of you may know, I had this really cool project happening where I went to Asia, to China, to Korea, to Japan to find out how the products that we enjoy at our home is made and manufactured. And I truly and honestly learned so much during the trip, after the trip, during the whole entire process. It was just a magical, very, nurturing and learning experience. But of course, 2025 was interesting also in the sense that we started off the year pretty strong with a product that I'm going to be giving the Product of the Year award to. And that is none other than the Arendal 1528 bookshelf loudspeakers. And it's almost hard to believe that was 10 months ago that I released that video. How time goes by. But it's one of those videos that I wasn't quite happy with. And no, it's not like I don't stand by everything I said. I still stand by everything I said in that video, or it would have been taken down. But it's more of the fact that I'm not so happy because I feel like I underrated or understated how great of a loudspeaker the 1528 bookshelf speaker actually is in that video. A lot of people know I love Arendal speakers and that I have presented Arendal speakers before on my channel with great enthusiasm. That some people may feel like it's too salesy or feel like I'm vouching for the company because I get money from them or sponsorship money, which is not true. So all these reasons, right? So keeping that in mind, I was hypercritical about that speaker. Now, obviously, I have not heard every speaker out there, so I'm not gonna sit here and say that this is the best speaker out there, but it is the best speaker I've personally heard in this price category. And there are a few objective reasons, like physical and measurement wise and all that kind of stuff, that presents itself in such a way where I feel like it provides enormous value even at the $5,200 price point, which is still a substantial price point for a lot of people. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this is the most affordable speaker out there for the money or stuff like that, but in the pinnacle of audio, where there's speakers in the $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 speaker, price ranges that I've heard in the past working at the retail store, going to audio shows, having private demos in my room or elsewhere, out of all these stuff that I've listened to in Asia, all of that, I feel like for the price of $5,200, which is relatively low, low side of ultra high-end audio, I feel like this speaker represents that ultra high-end performance at a price that is a little bit more approachable than others. Now, of course, it would be really amazing if Arendal decides to come up with a model that is going to be relatively inexpensive compared to even the 1528 models for those that can't afford the price tag of the 1528 series. That would be wonderful. But for now, from the time being made of this video, the date of this video, I feel like the 1528 bookshelf speaker, if you can afford it, is really hitting right there, hanging with the top dogs around the $15,000 to $20,000 speaker ranges. I mean, first of all, again, I've said this many times, but check out the size of this speaker for the money. And of course, there's an advantage, like I said, with the size of the speakers, the size of the cabinet volume being large, giving that more scale of sound and deep bass extension and dynamics and all that kind of good stuff. But it's not all about the size of the speaker that matters, because as the size of the speaker gets bigger, of course, things like bracing and how rigid and inert the cabinet is becomes more important, and more budget has to be oriented that way, because it's not just about making the biggest cabinet out of the cheapest flimsy material. We've seen some companies go in that direction of having thin walls in a big cabinet, and those are more colored, right? I wouldn't say those are inferior, but those are tuned for a specific different type of colored type of sound, more boxy type of sound. This speaker has a very inert cabinet, yet it is still humongous. And the cabinet material is also premium. It's made out of HDF, not just MDF or conventional materials out there, but it's made out of high density wood that is more dense, more rigid, more inert, and more higher quality and higher cost. So it is really awesome to see a company like Arendal build a speaker this big with proper bracing, proper inner cabinetry, and also up the game in terms of the material use. Now, granted, like I've told Arendal many times, I would love to see an MDF version of the speaker to reduce the cost of the cabinet design, because honestly, MDF can work tremendously well as well. But here, again, we're using that premium material that we see in really high-end audio market and more in line of what you will be getting with the ultra premium speakers in the market. Again, in that $15,000 to $20,000 price ranges. And once again, when it comes to a loudspeaker design, there's a lot of different moving parts to it. We just talked about the cabinet, but another interesting thing is that the front baffle of a loudspeaker is one of the most important things when it comes to a loudspeaker. In fact, when I began this channel, reviewing speakers and so on, way back, I mentioned this in one of my videos where I talk about the front baffle and the importance of that design. And over time, I just assumed that, people kind of remembered all that, but let me reiterate. The front baffle design is quite important. It's important how the speakers are, time aligned, and also how rigid the front baffle is holding the physical drivers that's exerting the force itself. And again, with the 1528 bookshelf speaker, you see innovation, not just design, but actual innovation, where the front baffle is curved in a way where the time alignment of the drivers are very precise, but also it is a very sophisticated design. Like the way this is made, every time I go to a high-end manufacturer, it's different from more budget, affordable oriented ones because they always have this kind of special design, a special element that makes their speakers sound a certain way, or, what they find to be more superior in terms of performance. And a lot of the affordable products actually does not have that. They're competing more with price versus the unique aspect or the unique innovation that they took part in. So it's really nice to see that the 1528 bookshelf speaker here does have that front baffle design that is time aligned and is made in a meticulous fashion where they are basically sandwiching bunch of pieces of wood, thin pieces of wood, bending it, and it takes about a week or something like that for it to cure, and it's just going to be a very, very tedious but a process that Arendal thinks is very much worth it. And I mean, for the DIY folks out there that have done your own DIY projects, you know how hard it is to curve any part of the baffle or the cabinetry. It takes time over and over again to do something like this, sometimes a span of months, to make sure that the wood is curved properly and stays curved that way, glued, sandwich and all that kind of stuff. So again, very meticulous process, and they've done a fantastic job of integrating this baffle to the overall cabinetry. And again, check out my full video to learn more about what the effect of this cabinetry and this front baffle design has on the overall sound. But basically, just briefly speaking, the imagery, the coherency, because all the sound from the treble to the bass is arriving to you, to the listener spot at a more precise kind of time, it is just more coherent. It is more easy to discern differences without having to really look for it. So all the separation of the instruments, the imagery, the sound staging, the separation, all that is going to be very precise, yet very musical and natural sounding to your ears and to your brain because of that phase coherency brought from this front curved baffle design. But in regards to that coherency and the overall sound quality that I'm hearing from the speaker that I have just absolutely fallen in love with, well, it's just more than the front baffle. Well, again, there's many moving parts to a loudspeaker, and one of the things that's very important, as any engineer will tell you, well, most engineers will tell you, is the drivers. The driver quality and the driver's own kind of limitation has a lot to do with the overall sound that you're hearing. And again, Arendal has made some very interesting choices here with the drivers, giving this really awesome linear sound, yet not boring, dynamic, and really engaging and fun and musical to listen to. It's an emotional experience as much as it is technical, which is again a hard balance for any speaker brand to get right. And I feel like Arendal has done that here with the lithium magnesium tweeter enclosed in this very unique waveguide. Now, of course, the driver material of the tweeter or the driver itself isn't everything. But I have to say, I really dig the sound of lithium magnesium tweeters, and I didn't even know they existed. Because quite embarrassingly, I haven't seen one before. And well, it turns out I don't really need to be embarrassed all that much because there's like only one other speaker, which was a flagship of Usher speaker or something like that, that used a lithium magnesium tweeter in their past design or something like that, right? In the ultra expensive category. So really, there's not a lot of lithium magnesium tweeters, if there's any, other than the one here on the 1528 series. And I found that it's a really great sound. You know, again, some people say technicality wise, it is better than even beryllium dome tweeters and so on. But really, it all depends on how the driver is manufactured and the design implementation and all that kind of stuff more so. And I just feel like the sound I'm getting from this tweeter is a one that is sweet. It has a great sense of definition, transparency, attack and decay, yet without sounding too lean or too analytical or stripping away of that musicality and that bite. I feel like it is not in your face, not aggressive, super refined, super airy, and also sweet sounding all the same, giving this really great sensation of detail without feeling like, you know, you're fatigued and you can't listen for a longer period of time. It's a speaker that you can listen for a long period of time with all the details there, and you just want to hear more and more, especially female voices, just the leading guitar, just absolutely amazing type of transparency, the detail, and the balance that just brings all this, you know, the sound profile and kind of makes it a little bit more special. So yeah, I think that tweeter is a special sauce when it comes to this loudspeaker. And if you appreciate detail, if you appreciate the top end airiness and the sweetness that you got from some mini monitors like the LS35A and so on in the past, I feel like you will really enjoy the transparency and the treble of this loudspeaker. And of course, you can't really see here because of the permanent grill attached, but the mid-range driver is also special as well, carbon, and it's, you know, akin to those that is used in much more expensive, like $10,000 mini bookshelf speakers with very quality mid-range drivers. So they put inside in the speaker a very high quality mid-range driver that is almost textbook in terms of measurement as well as how it delivers sound. Is very powerful but neutral, palpable, detailed, nuanced, textured, and most importantly, it crosses over and marries with the overall tonality of that lithium magnesium tweeter very, very well. And of course, it has this big 8-inch woofer with high excursion that produces really dynamic full range response in room. So if you're someone that wants a bookshelf design without subwoofers, that wants the full extension, the full range down into the 20 hertz range inside your room, this speaker will do that. And I mean, there's so much stuff that I love about this speaker that I can go on for days talking about it. I mean, from the premium binding post on the back, rhodium plated, and also the convenience of being able to adjust the treble through these jumpers so that you can tame the treble a little bit if it's a little bit too much, or you can even dial it up a little bit if you want a little bit more of that bite and that more airy presentation. So again, there's so many things about the speaker that I can just go on for days talking about how great it is. Again, that tweeter and mid-range driver, as you will notice, is this one very rock solid aluminum fascia inside the fascia. So it's very rigid, very, very coherent because of that kind of almost dual concentric kind of design, right? It's not dual concentric, but it almost comes across that way, how pinpoint, how accurate it is. But anyways, I can go on for days. But there is a caveat with this loudspeaker. Again, no loudspeaker is absolutely perfect. The caveat with the speaker is that it needs power. It is 84 dB in sensitivity, even though I measured it around 86. It is still inefficient. It still needs a lot of power behind it to sound its best. And that is where my reference amplifier going forward into 2026 comes in. The EMM Labs MTRS amplifier. Now this beastly high-end amplifier hangs right up there with stuff like Nagra, Dan D'Agostino, Griffin, upper-end Macintosh, Audio Research, and so on and so on. It's in the high-end audio market. Now, when it comes to the EMM Labs, one of the reasons that I decided to get this amplifier in here is because when I heard it at Expona this year, I thought this is an amplifier that I would love to use as a tool to review speakers. And there's few reasons for that. Not just to review speakers, but have as a reference point, because how am I supposed to review something in the $5,000, $3,000, even $500 price range, and then say that it punches above its price point or that it's really great, it beats high-end audio amplifiers and all that kind of stuff without having a proper reference point in that truly high-end category. So I was looking for something that would give me and serve me as a absolute reference point at its pinnacle. And this was it. When I heard it at Expona, I knew that this was it. Big power supply, big power banks, incredible robust build quality. And look at this power cord. Oh my God, 30 amp power cord, incredible, just high current, incredible amount of power, 400 watt stereo class AB amplifier. Designed none other than by Ed Meitner and designed, manufactured here in Canada. And there are a few reasons why this will serve me very well as a reference amplifier. First of all, it's going to be that amazing power delivery that is high current at its pinnacle. Once again, we're talking only about pinnacle with this amplifier, right? Because again, the price is quite up there. But this amplifier truly delivers high current at its absolute pinnacle. The power delivery is incredible. And it's not only able to drive most of the speakers out there and every speaker I've tried so far, but it is simply the next level in sound quality. Now, there's so many times where there's affordable products out there that's very good, but without a true reference point right beside you, it's sometimes hard, even as a reviewer, to really kind of decipher how much the affordable product punches above in its price point and how close it gets to something like the MTRS. And so far, having this reference here has been tremendously helpful because every time I compare a more affordable product to the MTRS directly, side by side, the MTRS wins every single time thus far. And that includes even my AGD Audion monoblocks as well as the Live Harmony monoblocks that I love very dearly. And don't get me wrong, these are still very great amplifiers and still my reference at these price points is that's more sensible, okay? But it is not comparable to something like the MTRS that has just incredible amounts of dynamics and it's just a brute force of nature in terms of how clean the delivery is. So it's not just about the dynamics, however, because this amplifier, once again, is designed by Ed Meitner and one of the best engineers in history in this industry, and it's going to be just an absolute amongst the best mid-range and transparent high frequency with linearity, dynamics, and this effortless type of sound is just absolutely incredible. And I won't go into it too much in this video because I know that I'm going to be making a dedicated review of the amplifier of the MTRS, so watch out for that video. But in this video, I just want to kind of, go over the surface of why I'm using it in the first place. And one of the other reasons is because this amplifier is capable of driving any impedance load down to even 1 ohms. So if I ever get a speaker in here that is very demanding and is very low in impedance and requires a special type of amplifier like this, then again, it's a testament to me being able to test it. And if I have a more affordable option that is still capable down to 1 ohms or 2 ohms, then at least I can compare it to something that I know is absolutely going to be stable down to 1 ohms and compare it and see what the effects are to the speakers. So it gives me a more accurate reference point to be able to talk about the things that I talk about. And I know the measurement as well as the overall sound quality is going to be the pinnacle of pinnacle because again, it's designed by Ed Meitner in the analog circuitry as well, using their ceramic, custom ceramic board. So again, I know it's going to be reliable. I know it's going to survive. And I know it's going to be something that stands the test of time in terms of what I'm going to be using with throughout the review process. And even with the 1528 bookshelf speaker, like I said, that speaker requires power. This amplifier does not even break a little sweat driving this thing. Like it's a whole different levels with something like a very affordable amplifier on the 1528 that sounds rather, wimpy and not very expressive versus something like my AGD Audion or the Live Harmony, something mid-tier. Now I say mid-tier, but it's up there, but still relatively mid-tier in comparison to the MTRS, right? That level difference is quite big. But from the AGD Audience or the Live Harmony to the MTRS is a whole different level altogether. So again, on the 1528 speaker that is requiring that power and dynamics and power behind it to sound its best, something like the MTRS just brings a whole different level game to the table. And a little sidetracking here, but I've always been a fan of Ed Meitner. He's one of the greatest designers that I personally know because he is one of the designers or the very few that I know that is experts both in digital and analog. Now that's very rare. Usually you'll find very good expertise in one or the other, but you're not gonna find, usually you're not gonna find an engineer that knows DSD to the point where he is one of the pioneers involved in DSD design, as well as someone that knows analog design, as well as to design the Olive mixing console that is still sought out by many famous studios to this day. Not to mention, one of my very first amplifier, solid state amplifier, was the Meitner MTR 101, and the stereo version of that amplifier was actually one of my first amplifiers ever. And I remember way back when I got the amplifier and I had it for a while, my friend Tujin brought the shit Vidar, which was the hype of the time. And he was like, this is gonna be better than that vintage amplifier you bought in the used market. And I said, well, let's try it. And we compared it with Magnepans. And Magnepans, they need current. And let me tell you, there was no comparison. Don't get me wrong, the Vidar is a great amplifier, and yes, even though today it's still a very good affordable option. But even back then, on the Magnepans, the Meitner MTR 101 drove it with current, effortlessness, confidence, while the Vidar sounded a little bit dark and a little bit struggling there, even the power rating was very similar. So again, I know that I like Ed Meitner's overall approach to design, and I know that I'm going to get the best of both digital and analog when used together. And that brings me to my new streamer and DAC, the MA3i. And this may come across as a surprise to some of you because I've been in love with my Arendal N20 streamer for the last 2-3 years. And I still love that streamer. It's a very great streamer. And I'm not saying the MA3i is better, but it is more natural sounding for me. Both are neutral, both are, very transparent and more on the kind of neutral, balanced sound profile. But I feel like the Arendals are a little bit more harder, a little bit more analytical than the MA3i. The MA3i, when I first reviewed it with Sean Fowler and when I first heard it in my room, like I said, it didn't have that classic wow factor. Wow, that treble transparency, or wow, that dynamics. It was more like, that's very balanced type of sound. And over time, it has really grown on me because it is exactly that. It is a neutral sound that isn't aggressive, that isn't analytical, that isn't stripped away of its musicality, and it still retains that kind of smooth analog type of sound, and it doesn't sound digital like a lot of the Delta Sigma DAC chips out there sound like. It doesn't have that digital edge or that digital kind of fatigue that I get with some Delta Sigma chips. Even though this is a Delta Sigma chip inside the MA3i, it is designed in-house and is manufactured in-house by EMM Labs. And again, being a huge fanboy of Ed Meitner's past design and expertise, if I want anyone to be designing my DAC chip, it would be Ed Meitner, because who else would I trust other than the guy that literally pioneered DSD with Sony and Philips and also designed mixing consoles, legendary Olive mixing consoles and, past amplifiers and DACs like the BiDAT that I have absolutely loved in the past. So again, it's a safe choice that I know I'm going to get a neutral, transparent, musical type of sound at its absolute pinnacle. And why wouldn't I be using the digital products from EMM Labs if I'm going to be using analog products from EMM Labs? From digital to analog, I feel like that marriage from someone that understands both, again, digital and analog design is a very safe and very sure way to know that you're going to be getting a system that is going to be very neutral and isolated to whatever speaker that I'm going to be reviewing. So again, it serves as an absolute pinnacle, great reference point for what I do on this channel. And again, it serves as a very simple two-box system to where, it's going to be a very short signal path where I have the streamer, DAC, and preamplifier or volume control inside one box, the MA3i, going straight into the MTRS. So this is going to be giving me a very natural, neutral type of sound with a short signal path, again, giving me that ultimate reference point for whatever I'm reviewing or comparing at the time. And of course, I know that some of you guys are going to be asking me, okay, well, how does it compare with Accuphase or D'Agostino or Griffin or Nagra, etc.? And the idea is that once in a while, I will get in a reference piece to compare directly with EMM Labs in my room. And even though I've heard D'Agostino, Nagra, and all these great brands out there, and I have a general idea of how each one compares, I'm not going to make a full-on video based on my audio memory. I'm just going to say this. EMM Labs, I chose it as my reference because out of all, I found that it provides dynamics, neutrality, and exactly what I'm looking for my neutral reference system as both enjoyment and as a reference point for that absolute neutrality and dynamic range and bandwidth. So again, we'll talk about all that in the actual review of the MTRS amplifier. But after my trip to Japan, of course, Accuphase sent me the E700 to review next, and I will tell you right now that, just look at the size difference between the two of these things. I know one is an integrated amplifier, again, less expensive than the MTRS, obviously. That's a solo amplifier. But, the size difference right there is enormous. And let me tell you, for anyone that knows Accuphase, that's a full-size integrated amplifier that you're seeing right beside the MTRS, and the E700 looks rather tiny. But I got in the E700 because it's a Class A design, and after reviewing the Class AB design, the E3000, Accuphase wanted my opinion on the E700. So that's what I'm going to be reviewing. And of course, right now I'm comparing it to the EMM Labs MTRS as my reference point to see what sound profile the Accuphase possesses. And I'll make sure to mention that in my actual review of the E700. Now going into 2026, I also wanted to up my game in terms of my CD player. And of course, I had the ET3 from Shenling before, and recently I reviewed some portable CD player that I'm using upstairs still, and it's absolutely wonderful. Shenling has been pushing out really amazing products, and I understood why when I visited their facility this year in China. Now, literally OEMs and design things for other Chinese companies and other companies abroad. So they're right there with people that have been in this industry, that have literally designed hundreds of products for themselves and for other brands. So they have done a lot of work to and know how to design a good product. And I think CD player is one of their strong points, because when I got in this SCD 3.3 CD player that uses 12AT7 tubes married with an R2R DAC, give me a break, guys. You guys know you guys know that hits exactly my spot. Like that tube R2R top loading CD player. I was gonna say that if this didn't sound good, I was ready to pack my bag and go home, wherever that is. This is my home, but regardless, it was almost, I was so excited to hear this unit that I just could not wait. I was literally like, is it ready? Is it ready? Is it here yet? Is it here yet? And when it was finally here, I hooked it up. And because my expectation was so high, I didn't think that it was gonna exceed that high expectation. And it did. This unit just sounds absolutely fabulous and it's going to be my reference CD player for indefinite future until I find something better. But like, this is incredible, pinnacle of what I want to experience in a CD player. It plays as SACDs, has I2S and all that great stuff, has all the inputs and outputs that I possibly need. And it is a top loading CD player and it looks nice, has tube, it has R2R DAC, and the R2R DAC is not just a throw in there. It is a very great sounding R2R DAC with that tube, 12AT7s. It just brings out this incredible mid-range and musicality that I exactly look for in a great R2R tube combination. And this being a CD player, again, elevates that level to a whole new level that it just brings life back to all of my CD collection, and it makes me go through them every single day with appreciation. It is just a very musical piece, and I cannot wait to review and talk more about this unit to you guys in the new year. But yes, this is going to be my reference CD player that I'm going to be using when I test with CDs and so on in my system. And again, another data point outside of just streaming with something like the MA3i, right? What happens if I use something that's a little bit more colored and more tubulicious and more R2R like, like the SCD 3.3. So again, another kind of reference point for my different media playback, which is CDs. And again, it's gonna be great because I can compare the internal R2R DAC, because this also works as a transport using I2S out to any other DACs that has I2S and so on. So I can use it to test other R2R DACs in the market and compare it with the internal one. So that's gonna be great at comparing different kind of DACs all across the board to the one inside the SCD 3.3 that I'm very familiar with by now. Now, along with the SCD 3.3 and my reel-to-reel, as well as my, turntable setup, which hasn't changed all that much, again, go watch my analog reference turntable setup that I have made with my Alnick phono stage and the Harmony turntable. And I think the only thing that might be changing in the new year is that I might be upgrading my Harmony turntable to the bigger and better Symphony turntable, because when I saw it at Expona once again, I absolutely fell in love with it. So I might do that, but again, largely hasn't changed. So with the reel-to-reel, the CD player, and again, the turntable setup, I have these more analog media sources, different media sources that I would like to use. And I obviously need a preamplifier because all these sources are, not going to be able to be used with the MA3i. So I wanted something again to replace my Auric tube preamplifier that I have been using as my reference for some time now. And you guys know that I absolutely love that tube preamplifier from Auric. And it's truly a boutique, amazing, and it's still really amazing. Jupiter capacitors and all that kind of stuff. Very musical sounding. But I sold it. And I sold it because I was comparing it with the Galleon Navy. And this is something that I did not expect for it to happen, but I overall prefer the sound profile, the more airy, the more meaty textures of the Navy Galleon, the more nuanced, delicate textures of the Navy Galleon, opposed to the more smooth and more tube-like in the sense of more vivid imagery with the Auric. So it's gonna come down to taste, but I wanted to try something new, and to my surprise, the Galleon Navy has been an absolute game changer in my system. And again, everyone knows I'm friends with Thomas, but realistically, we're both Asian, but we're not that close. And truth be told, I didn't love every Galleon piece to this regard, not for it to be literally my reference. Like, listen, I love Thomas, but when I say it's my reference, that means that it's going to be appearing in my videos regularly. It means that I'm going to be using it regularly and I have to use it regularly. I'm not going to sit here and torture myself for Thomas. So just want to keep that clear. Absolutely nothing to do with my friendship with Thomas as a fellow YouTuber. And like I said, we're not even that close. So give us a break. I really think the Navy Galleon is a great tube preamplifier. Again, what I experienced from Doge preamplifiers from the past, if you guys remember, is that elevated to a more refined, more mature type of sound that is more expressive, more meaty, more tube-like, more musical, warm, rich, with a little bit of airiness, but with tube character changes, it can get even more airy, more meaty, and it's just a very, very tube-like preamplifier that I can confidently tell someone, hey, if you want to try a really good tube preamplifier without breaking the entire bank, then this is something that you might want to consider. Again, the components in here is absolutely phenomenal, absolutely top of the class, and you can see it readily displayed inside. And I believe you can't even buy it right now because it's quite literally sold out, and Thomas won't be getting a order until like March or something like that. So check with him whenever, but again, this is not to sell the Navy preamplifier, so I don't want my friendship again with Thomas that people think that we're so tight or something because we're both Asians. Again, come on.
People laughed at me, they mocked me.
Again, I don't want that assumption to take away from what I love and what I'm expressing about the Galleon Navy is truly with Thomas or without Thomas in the equation, it is truly a standout product that I really, really love. Now, the overall design-wise, in terms of the casing and the logo placement, like again, I have issues with that, but I'll get into that in the actual video because this video, I want to leave it on a positive note since we're entering into the new year. And right about now, I think some of you may be asking, what about your main speakers, the Platimons? And well, the Platimons couldn't be included in this video, unfortunately, because it has the new tweeter, has a upgraded version, and it has now gone back to monoacoustic to be upgraded to the new version, and it just hasn't arrived yet. So hopefully with the new modification or the new upgrade, it actually sounds better, and I'll keep it as my main speakers, the main speakers that I love, but we'll have to see. But from what I heard with the Brewmaster gear at the Toronto Audio Fest, once again, like I mentioned in that video, it was really breathtaking and I loved it. So I'll be really curious to hear it with the EMM Labs amplifier here, and I'll look forward to that. So that's pretty much it for my system update going into 2026. And as you guys know, every year I take very important considerations and experimentations over a long period of time to come up with my references for the year. So yes, I might find something that I'm really like during the year that I might include as my reference on as we go, and something may be switched out if it's impeccably better. So again, the references are there, and they're there to be the heavy hitters, the bar to cross. But as we've seen with my turntable setup, as well as my phono stage, the Audiophile phono stage, as well as the AGD audience and Arendals for the last few years, it has really become hard for a lot of products to cross that bar. So again, it's with very important consideration that I choose my reference system literally to stay true to the word reference. So yeah, so I hope this video served you well in that way so that you have a better understanding of my reviews going into 2026 and when I mention these products as a comparison, as you will already have an understanding as to why I'm using these products. So that's pretty much it. I hope this video was helpful and entertaining. And again, Happy New Year, and I hope to see you guys more in the next year. So make sure you subscribe and click that like button, and I'll see you guys on my next one. Until next time.